You ever have someone try to steal your whole damn life out from under you, smiling the whole time? Yeah, that happened. One day you're sitting by your own lake, a mug of coffee steaming in your hand, thinking you've got winter figured out. Next thing you know, the HOA is sending threats, nailing signs into ground. You bled on as a kid, calling the sheriff to haul you off the only piece of earth that ever felt like home. They thought winter would keep me quiet, but you know what? The louder their boots crunched over my shoreline, the more I remembered who I was and who that lake belonged to. I'm not saying I'm special. I'm just a stubborn old man in a green wool coat patched so many times it probably weighs more thread than fabric. That coat belonged to my dad, and most days it still smells like him pine tobacco. A hint of stubbornness passed down like a birthmark. I've spent 37 winters out there, sitting in the same dented fold-out chair, staring at a hole in the ice that's always felt like a door to some quieter world. The lake's real name is Hollow Pine, but most folks just say the lake like it's the only one that ever mattered. It hugs the north end of our neighborhood. If you can call a cluster of houses with too many rules a neighborhood, like a lopsided heart, all soft curves and unexpected depths. The place used to be called McCadler Stretch, after my grandfather, the same man who built the cabin I still call home. Developers tried to rebrand it as Snow Ridge Heights, tacked up some fancy signs, planted decorative shrubs, renamed the roads. But you can't rebrand history, not really. The land remembers who loved it first. My father taught me to fish that lake, and when the ice would freeze glass clear, he'd say, "Son, listen to it talk. The groans, the cracks, the way the wind brushes the trees. That's the sound of a place keeping its secrets." I taught my boy the same way. He taught his daughter before he packed up for Texas, running from winters that never seemed to bother me much. Since Mary Ann passed, God, it's been 5 years already, I find myself out there more and more. She always said winter was honest, stripped bare, no place to hide. Some nights I talk to her out loud like she's just over my shoulder. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just the only one listening. The rules back when there were rules were simple: mind your business, plow the roads, respect the ice. The association back in the day was just neighbors making sure nobody's mailbox got run over. No one thought to tell me what to do with my own land, much less my own lake. All that changed when new money started trickling in. New families, new cars, new ways of telling people like me I was unsafe or out of compliance. HOA meetings multiplied. I kept to myself, my lot hanging off the edge of their color-coded maps like something they were waiting to pave over. Thing is, my deed's older than most of their marriages handed down, signed, notarized, and tucked away in a fireproof box. 30 feet of shoreline around the entire lake, all of it inside my family's lines, their backyard views. That didn't make the lake theirs, no matter how many community benches they drilled into the ground. Last January, I finished building a little ice shack, Mary Ann's name carved into the beam over the door, sun bleeding orange across the ice snow, falling thick as memories. I was minding my own business when I saw them. One in a reflective vest, the other with a clipboard marching out across the frozen lake like they owned the place. Robert introduced himself with the board. The woman with him didn't bother. "Routine audit of lake use," she said, her voice crisp, brittle, impatient. "Please refrain from further ice fishing until we complete our liability assessment." I looked at her, really looked, and said, "I own this lake." She smiled tight as a locked gate. "That's something we'll be looking into." That night I pulled out every map, every faded photo, every legal scrap I could find. Just to be sure, it was all there airtight as a drum. But I knew facts don't mean squat to people who already made up their minds. 2 weeks later, a violation notice slid under my door. Unauthorized use of community water feature, it said. Immediate cessation of ice fishing pending board approval. I read it 3 times, set it down, and stared at the lake, blue-white, under the February sun. That water ran through my veins before any of them knew what amenities meant. Then came the second letter, pinned to a pine like a hunter's kill tag. Final notification violation fines escalating. Motor equipment violations, my old snowmobile, even environmental disruption. From a folding chair and a hand auger. They said I was endangering the structure of the ice, interfering with seasonal amenities. I folded that letter and sat on the porch, gloves on, watching a handful of kids slip and laugh as they tried to skate. I'd never stopped a single one of them, not once. That's when I realized this wasn't about safety. It was about control. See, Karen Monroe had moved in the summer before, bringing lemonade and cookies to meetings, smiling that perfect realtor smile, slowly weaving herself into every committee. By winter, she had enough allies to rewrite the bylaws in the shadows. Suddenly, the lake was a community asset, shared use resource, a recreational portfolio item. My land, my water, treated like a line on a spreadsheet. I made copies of everything, deeds, maps, affidavits. I highlighted the boundaries in red, dropped the packet into the HOA drop box with a note. You do not own my lake. Stop trespassing. I figured that would end it. I was wrong. A couple days later, I saw men in vests hammering orange signs into my shoreline. HOA ice safety zone, no fishing. Told them to get off my land. They shrugged, just following orders. So I went to their meeting, the first time in my life I bothered. Karen at the head of the table, her smile polished to a blade. I laid it all out. 75 years of peaceful use, the deed, the rights. Karen just smiled wider. With all due respect, Mr. McCadler, the board has voted unanimously to consider the lake part of the community sphere of influence. Sphere of influence? Like I was a rogue state. She said they'd petition the city to update the zoning. In the meantime, we ask for your cooperation. That night, I stood on the ice and let the wind scream through the trees, remembering Marianne's hands warming mine, her voice humming off key, refusing to let them turn my life into a story I didn't recognize. Next day, I was back at my fishing hole. 3 hours later, the sheriff pulled up. He didn't arrest me, just shook his head and said the HOA was escalating. Karen was relentless, a room colder the second she entered, all clipped edges and rules no one remembered making. The old HOA was just a coffee club. After Karen, it became a mini police state. She banned garage sales, introduced mandatory mailbox sizes, even hired private security to shine spotlights on violations. After the sheriff left, the real psychological games began. Winter safety surveys on my land, clipboards, drones buzzing overhead, volunteers photographing my ice shack and boathouse. A guy spent 10 minutes taking close-ups of a plaque I nailed to a pine in 1937. Karen wants documentation, he said, flat as toast. Then came the banners, Winter Wonder Snowfest, January 15th. Live music, cocoa booths, kids curling right on my lake. No permits, no notice, just entitlement. That night, standing on the shore, I felt something shift. They'd stolen my silence, so I decided to use my voice. See, what Karen didn't know, what the whole HOA missed, was that I used to write the laws they were breaking. 30 years with the State Department of Environmental Quality, writing water policy, enforcing code. I made a single call, and Bennett Ditt, an old friend, answered. You got photos, he asked. I got a damn library. He laughed. All right, old man, let's make some noise. I let them think I'd given up. Meanwhile, I put together a binder that would make a lawyer cry: deeds, survey plats, color-coded maps, photos of every violation, even the city code section circled in red. 3 days after Karen's annexation letter, I found plastic fencing running along my shoreline. Signs flapping, reserved area, HOA, events only. I ripped one off and brought it home like firewood. I called Karen, calm as ever. You've got 60 feet of fencing on my property. She tried the Mr. McCadler, we're trying to avoid escalation bit. I hung up and wrote my first formal cease and desist, hand-delivered it. Next day, the fencing doubled. This time, signs read, structurally compromised, ice danger of collapse. Lies. The ice was thick as a brick. I'd checked it myself. I made 3 calls. Bennett at DQ. No permits. Field inspection incoming. Trina at the county. No annexation. What they're doing is borderline criminal. Mark Wendell, a lawyer who still owed me for a favor back in '83, "You want to make this public?" I told him I want it to stop. Then we start with an injunction. That night I couldn't sleep. Not out of fear, but because I finally felt something moving my way. 2 days later, I hammered up my own sign in the snow facing their cameras. "Private property trespassers will be prosecuted. Owner on site, armed with paperwork. Let them watch. Let them drone. Winter belonged to me." Then the festival rolled in. Floodlights, DJ vans, fake snow machines. They built a stage the size of my living room, set up cocoa booths, even bleachers. Every morning more trucks arrived, every evening more banners. I kept fishing invisible in every community spirit photo. The night before the event, I got one last warning: unauthorized presence during HOA event preparation. I replied with a scan of my deed, no words, just facts. The next morning, a guard post went up. Barry, the guy who borrowed my snow shovel back in '14, wouldn't look me in the eye. "Just event coordination," he mumbled. "I'm not here for the event," I said. He just shrugged. That night, the lake lit up like Times Square. Kids laughing, music thumping, fireworks cracking over the ridge. It would have been beautiful if it hadn't been built on a lie. The next morning, Bennett called. "Your HOA friends didn't just forget a permit. They forgot every single one. Land use public assembly, noise, health forms, nothing. And they're running fuel generators on a frozen lake bed." I grinned for the first time in months. "You got them, Jack." That day the inspectors came. Karen handed them a folder probably full of fairy tales. They shook their heads. Then one by one, yellow cease and desist stickers started blooming across the ice on the cocoa booth, the stage, the generators. The DJ killed the music. Kids wandered off. Karen paced in circles, phone glued to her ear face turning the color of uncooked steak. Late that night, Barry knocked on my door holding out a thermos. Didn't know he said about any of it. I thought we were just throwing a party for the kids. I took the coffee, watched him trudge back down to the lake, footprints already filling in behind him. They were starting to remember what mattered. The morning after, the lake looked like a battlefield, empty booths, limp banners, the wind scraping the snow clean again. The city mailed me the official report: HOA failed to file permits event. Unauthorized fines pending further review of HOA governance initiated. I taped it to the fridge. Mark called nearly giddy. "We file the injunction Monday. Public apology, removal of every sign, damages if you want." I told him, "Just keep it clean. Make it hurt where it counts their reputation." Within days, whispers turned to emails, resignations, even a poll about whether Karen should resign. It was running 91% yes before they shut it down. Screenshots of her faked emails, blank permit forms taped to her door. The dam had broken. Then the court order arrived, stamped official, all HOA activity on Hollow Pine Lake prohibited. I posted copies on every shore. The news ran with it photos of the abandoned site, aerial shots from 1958 showing the cabin and lake long before Snow Ridge existed. The HOA sent out frantic bulletins blaming communal optics and jurisdictional confusion, but no one was buying what they were selling anymore. By the next community meeting, they froze Karen's authority 47 to remove her powers. 3 abstained, 1 against guess who. She packed up her folders and walked out without a word. The crown was buried in the snow. People started leaving things at my door: homemade cookies, beer, a card from a kid. "Our lake has a grandpa." I kept every one. When they finally asked me to speak, I told the truth about my grandfather, my father, Mary Ann, about how easy it is to mistake silence for surrender. "The lake never belonged to me," I said. "I belonged to it. All I did was remember a promise." They stood and clapped, some just nodded, and I felt the weight start to lift. Spring came slow, the ice slipping away without banners or noise, just geese dogs, kids with sticks, people always waving, always asking permission before stepping out onto the thaw. That was the apology. One April morning, a boy, nervous red-cheeked, asked if he could fish. Anywhere along that bank, I told him, just stay this side of the big stump. Was it really your lake first? He asked. I thought about it about all the years, all the lines, all the fights. No, I said. It never belonged to me, but I was the one who remembered. The next winter, it was just the lake again. No fences, no banners, no self-crowned queens. The new board sent a real letter, promised the lake would stay out of all community events, offered to put up signs. I told them no signs needed. If anyone has questions, they know where I live. Most mornings it was just me again, same coat, same thermos, same old auger. Sometimes a father and son would ask to drill nearby, or a couple would skate quietly at dusk. They always asked first. That was enough. On the first perfect morning, I thought I saw Mary Ann in the shimmer under the ice just for a heartbeat, a trick of light and memory. I kept it. I whispered and felt her answer settle like a hand on my shoulder. I caught a silver perch, slipped it back. Didn't need trophies anymore, just the knowing that some things endure if you refuse to let go. Before I left, I buried her mitten beneath the ash tree. No speech, just a promise kept. The wind pushed at my back all the way home like it was telling me I'd done enough. The sun burned pink and gold over the lake, no stage, no crowds, just ice and me. But finally it was enough. So let me ask you, who owns a place really? The one with the deed, the one who remembers, or the one who tries to steal it with a smile? Tell me what you think. Have you ever had to stand your ground for something that mattered? Where's the line between justice and revenge, right and wrong, memory and progress? Leave a comment. Share your story and let's talk about what it means to keep a promise when the snow starts to fall.